and welcome to today's podcast from the Value Project. I'm Becky.
I'm Mary.
And today we are going to carry on looking at Psalm 139. Now, we did a podcast not that long ago on the first half of this psalm, and today we're looking at the second half. So if you haven't already listened to our last podcast, I suggest you go back and listen to it.
Yeah, and you will find out if you listen to it what really exciting thing Becky did with the rest of her day. So that is one reason to listen to it.
I will admit I didn't actually do what I said I was
Did you not? That's not actually, I can tell.
Oi.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen to it.
Yeah, see how boring my life is. Anyway, should we get on to what we're actually talking about as opposed to my bag cleaning? So we're looking at Psalm 139. But Mary, why are we looking at Psalm 139? And what was, like, if you had to round up the first half in like a sentence, how would you round it up?
Yeah, so Psalm 139 is a chapter in the Bible, in the book of Psalms, which is kind of a book of poetry, mostly written by a guy called King David. And this bit is written by King David. And we wanted to do a little study on it because we think it really kind of underpins a lot of what we really want the Value Project to be, what we want God to do through it, and like what our heart is for it. So it comes in 4 parts of the poem. It's a poem in 4 parts, and the first 2 parts we looked at last time. The first one was about how God knows us. He knows everything about us. He knows the good, the bad, everything about us. And the second part is about that even though God knows all that, He is with us all the time. In every situation, every circumstance, He is always with us. So that's kind of where we've got up to. And now we're going to look from verse 13 onwards. So should I read it?
Yeah, shall I start with a prayer first?
Yes, good thinking.
Lord Jesus, we just lift up this time to you, Lord, and as we chat and have a conversation, Lord, we ask that you inspire us and lead our conversations. And for those who are listening, Lord, we pray that if there's any parts that are relevant for them or that you want them to kind of really apply to their lives, Lord, that you will just open their ears and hearts to that. Amen.
Amen. Cool. So from verse 13, and we're only going to read it from verse 13, but I would really encourage you, if you can, pause this, go read the other half of it, and then come back. But yeah. So, for you create my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you, when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book, before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. If only you, God, would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak to you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me to the way everlasting. So so we're going to take the first from verse 13 to 18, and I'm going to jump in because I have something that I just absolutely love about this. The first verse is you knit me together in my mother's womb, and like that is a verse that is used again and again in schools, in your RE exams. You know, it's again and again it gets used. But one thing I just love about that is like the intimacy of it. Like, you knit me together. Like, it takes me back to a little bit. Becky, a few Christmases ago, me and you decided to take up knitting.
That was a disaster.
It was. And Becky is better, you're better than me at knitting.
I made one thing.
Yeah,
with a lot of help.
I made a square. And it took us hours and hours. And our mum patiently tried to teach us, and we kept getting things wrong, but we put so much like time and effort and thought.
You gave up a lot quicker than me.
I did, admittedly. but the point is how much effort and thought and love went into trying to knit, and just that thought of like, that's how we are created. We're created much better than that.
Yeah, he didn't give up.
He didn't give up. But we're not just off a production line. We're not just like, you know, something, a copy of that there's millions of. We are created. We have been crafted. We've designed the way we are, and like the intimacy of that, I just think is awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty mind blowing, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah.
like God God created you in that way is pretty nuts.
And he designed us in that way. I think so often, like, I'm not going to go into this too much, but when we look at ourselves and you see flaws and you see things you don't like, but actually that we're created, we've been designed, we've been crafted that way, and God looks at us and loves that. And I think that kind of goes into the next bit.
Verse 14.
Yeah.
Where it says, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Like for me, when you read that, when I read that the first time, I think David's a bit big-headed. Like, do you know what I mean? Like he's like, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. Like he's talking about himself. He's like, I'm so amazing and so wonderful and great, and you've made me, and I know that. How wonderful. Like that's how I first read it, if I'm honest. And like this Bible verse also gets quoted a lot. Like people say, oh, but you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And that kind of fearfully and wonderfully made. But actually, like when you stop and think about it, it's like actually David knows that God makes no mistakes. Like David, although he messes up a lot in his life, if you read more in the Bible about him, he actually it says about him like knowing he had God's heart. He knew who God was, and like, he really understood that God was this perfect being and loving, powerful being, and that he was perfect, and that actually if God made it, it was also perfect. It was also wonderful. So I just, when I read this, I think David really got that actually, because God made him, he was wonderful. Because God made him, he was, you know, when it says about fearfully, it doesn't mean like, oh, I'm scared fearful. It means more like in awe, like I'm in awe, like in like kind of like complete awe, like of something. So he's like, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm in such awe of the way that God has made me. I'm in such a wonderful way. Like I'm so wonderful because God has made me.
Yeah.
And actually, like, you know, we've talked about, this is kind of one of the reasons why this passage is important to us here at the Value Project, is because like our biggest passion is that people could see their true value, could just see their true worth. And actually David does in this bit. Like David sees that God made him, and that actually he is wonderful, and he is fearfully made, and like that means I am wonderfully and fearfully made, and it even means you are wonderfully and fearfully made. Even, you know, it's crazy, isn't it? Like actually.
And I just think, imagine like how much different our days would be if when you wake up in the morning, you see yourself and your hair's like all in weird angles and your bed hair and probably all the dribble down your face. And
you do anyway.
Yeah, sore point Bex. Imagine, you know, when you look at yourself, you see yourself through the eyes that God sees you. Yeah. It's like, I am wonderful. Like maybe challenge you tomorrow when we're gonna wake up. Look at yourself and just. I am wonderful. Say that to yourself. And see if it changes, how it changes your day.
Yeah. And I just think, you know, when someone knows their true value and their true worth, like your focus, and when you know that, like when we know our value and our worth, and we know it, and it comes from God.
Yeah.
Like actually, our focus can then be on God and be on like, instead of like, because I think we spend most of our life looking for a way to make us valuable or make us do you know what I mean? Like we waste so much time and energy in being like, actually when we can see that we find our value and our worth from God, and we have that because God's created us and he only makes good things.
Yeah.
You know, we can choose to do bad things and mess it up, but he's not created that path for us. I just think it's cool. It's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
Another bit which I just really loved in verse 16 and where it says, if I can find it, all the days ordained for me were written in your book. And actually, when I first read this, I've kind of found there's kind of two different interpretations to this, which I think is really interesting. So, like, you come across this a lot in the Bible. There'll be different people have different interpretations, and that's totally okay. And it's okay to have differing opinions with other people, but you can get so much by just learning and listening from other people's. So my initial thing when I read this was about how, you know, all the days ordained for me are written in my book. Like God has planned each day for me. Like God has written each day for me before they even happen. And what that means is that, like, if I wake up in the morning, then there's a purpose for me. If I'm still here, then there's a purpose for me. If I'm still breathing, then God's still working. If I'm still here, God has got something for me to do. And I just think that's awesome, because sometimes I think if you're feeling down, it can feel really like, oh, what's the point? But actually, if the reason, if I've got air in my lungs, then there is a point. Do you know what I mean? And then when I looked into this a bit more, that the second interpretation was actually that, the word days is kind of translated differently, and what it could also mean is what David's kind of saying is that as he lives his days, God is recording them. So it goes back to that point about God being with us. So, as I do my things, as I grow up, as I develop in different ways, God, you are watching, you are recording. And I think both are really, for both interpretations, you can get a lot out of, God has got, because we know God's got plans for us. It's all throughout the Bible it talks about God's plans for us. But also God is with us and he's watching us in the moment now, not just in the future.
Yeah.
I just think that's really cool.
I quite like I'm gonna go from verse 17 actually. Yeah. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. Were I to wake up, I am still with you. I like that last word. When I wake up, I am still with you. In my head, I hear David surprised. He's like, were I to wake up, I'm still with you. He's like, you're still here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I realised how how wonderful, how great you are, and all this, and yet I can't even think about what is. I've lost it.
No, you haven't. You haven't.
I did. I lost it.
One thing we're passionate about the Value Project is being real, and actually, me and Becky aren't biblical scholars who have studied for all our lives. We are just people that love God and read the Bible together, and so yeah, we sometimes lose it, but you haven't lost it, Becky.
I did lose it, but I had a good point, but I can't remember what it was. About
how David is surprised when
oh yeah,
wake up.
I think David's oh, I'm totally surprised that you're still here.
Yeah.
After all of this, you're so wonderful, you're so great, you're so awesome. And yet, when I wake up having thought about all of that, you're still here.
Yeah, no, totally.
You're still with me and all that.
I love that.
I felt like I had a better point than that, but I've forgotten what it was.
Well, if it comes back to
maybe when I make notes in the future, I should make more than just say, when I wake up, David is surprised.
So what we're learning today is Becky needs better note-taking skills, but that's okay. So that's kind of what we've come up with, for that next section was about, we are designed, we have been created, and we have a purpose, and God has a purpose for us.
So recap, section 1 of it from the last podcast, you know me. Section 2, you are with me. Section 3, not just that you know me, you're with me, but you've also created me.
Yes.
Section 4, the last section. This is the bit that I find harder to get my head into.
It's a bit of a change of gear. So here we see a bit of a shift where in the past David's been talking about God, and now he's talking a bit more about kind of himself and how he sees himself.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting. And I'm going to admit, when I first read this, I was kind of
we were should we just miss it out?
Yeah, we really did. We had a discussion, but should we just miss it out because it's a bit awkward.
Then we were that annoys us when people do that. They just pick their favourite.
So we're not going to miss it out. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to do our best to talk about it. But what I think is just really important about this next section is he's changing, he's making that shift and talking about God. And instead what he's doing now is he's taking the situations around him and he's bringing them to God. He's saying, God, you know me, you're with me, you created me. This is the stuff that's really hard right now. This is the stuff which is really difficult.
I think as well, when you read it, you remember this is what David's saying, not what God's saying. So verse 19 is if only you, God, would slay the wicked, away from me, you who are bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
That's David saying that.
Yeah, so, David's being why has it got to be like this? Can you just get rid of all the bad things? And I think what this also reminds us is that even, we've established that God knows us and he's with us, but actually that doesn't mean we're not going to face threats, doesn't mean we're not going to face danger. But actually what's really important is God is with us in all those situations, he's near us, and that gives us hope, I guess, in facing those threats and in facing those hard things. And one thing it really reminds me of is, when I was in... you may know this, Becky. I was in hospital recently.
Really?
I wasn't very well. But when I was there's a week I was in and I was quite poorly and I couldn't really...
Did you say you were in for a week?
1 week I was in.
Oh, one of the weeks.
One particular week I was in, I was quite poorly and I couldn't really I didn't have any energy to do anything. And it was a really scary time. But the one thing that I could do is listen to music. And I pretty much just listened to worship music on repeat for a week. And it's strange because it was probably the scariest time of my life, but actually I felt the closest to God. I felt so intimate with God, and it was that hope of God being with me. I know God. I was still going through that hard time, but God was with me, and it just made it 100 times, not easier, just 100 times just different. It made it so much different, and I would dread to think what that would have been like had I not had that intimacy with God at that time. So that's what that kind of reminds me about, and I just think that's awesome.
Why does that experience remind you of this bit of the verse?
I think it's just because it's that kind of like acknowledging that hard stuff is going to happen. Hard stuff is going to go through this, and this is what David's saying. And there were times in hospital, like David, I was like, can we just take this away from me? Can we just can we just be better now?
I mean, I hope you weren't saying that you
get
away from me.
You are bloodthirsty. I did say that to one nurse, and she did get a bit. No, I'm joking. But yeah, just that kind of. Actually, it's okay to be real with God and say, I hate this. This is rubbish. But it's holding on to that hope and holding on to the knowledge that God is with us. That is really important. Yeah.
The bit on verse 21 where it says, "Do I not hate those that you hate, Lord, and abhor where have we gone? Those who are in rebellion against you." I was reading a study thing about it, and it's saying actually it's a bit like there was a bit like people when they have that saying of like your enemies are my enemies, your friends are my friends, and that was those I don't really understand all, but around that that would have been the kind of mentality with the kind of people who had made pledges like kings and stuff, pledges and different
so it's like a historical link to that.
Yeah, so when it's kind of saying I hate those who you hate, Lord, that's what kind of if you made an alliances with people, they'd have done that. They'd have said this is where I'm friends with this country or this group of people, and so for whoever their enemies are. It still happens now actually. Why do you think about it? If two countries go to war with each other, so often other countries get involved because they're defending people that they're kind of friendly with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of talking a bit like that. So David here is kind of saying, I hate those who hate you. They don't like you, so I don't like them. I'm on your side here, God, kind of thing.
That's really cool. And I guess the last bit as well I find really interesting. "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me, know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in that way everlasting." And what David's saying there is actually really quite brave.
Yeah.
He's saying to God point out my flaws, point out the things I'm doing that aren't of you, point out the stuff I'm getting wrong, show me what I'm doing wrong and show me a better way. And
that's uncomfortable.
That's so uncomfortable. If I came to you and was like, "Hey Becky, can you tell me all the things you think I'm doing wrong and tell me how to do it better?" No, that's such a ow, my confidence. But to show that the fact is we've already established God knows us. He created us. He's with us. So actually, if I come to God and say, "God, I think I'm doing, I think I'm actually really, ungenerous to people. I feel maybe I'm being really selfish. How can I be?"
But it's not even just then, is it? It's in terms of even when you feel actually I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Still coming to God and saying, "God, examine me, show me where I'm not," because we're not perfect. So there's always going to be stuff.
It's such a bold thing to do, but also God can have such a transforming way, and I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, but I think it's so important because that's how people grow and learn and change, is by asking that very question. Isn't it? God, search me and show me, reveal to me what I can do differently.
And I think out of all of this, that's probably that bit is what challenges me the most. Going forward from this, is being do I have it in me to say that prayer to God? And I want to, and it's a little bit scary what God's going to say back, but and I guess we kind of encourage you guys too as we kind of draw the study to an end. Pick out, that might not be it, but pick out points from this. Is it that you don't believe that God knows you? Is it that you feel like God does, because he does know you, like, work through that with God? Is it that when you look at yourself, you don't see yourself through the eyes that God sees you? You don't see that you are designed and you are wonderful? Really pray into that if that's the case. Is it that you feel alone and that God isn't with you? Maybe pray into that. Or is it that you feel like, actually, I'm doing everything really well right now. I am crushing life. I am like absolutely awesome. Then maybe it's turn to God and say, what am I not doing right? Teach me your ways. So that kind of concludes the end of our
there's like
study.
so much in this Bible. Like we could re-talk about this about 100 times and still get more out.
And I'm not gonna lie, we'll probably revisit this again.
I think we will. Point. Yeah, good, because I think, like we said at the beginning, this passage has been in our heart a lot whilst we started thinking about this value project, because actually the whole thing about this passage is about it. God knows us. God's chosen to be with us. He knows us in the good, the bad. He's created us. And actually, so often I said earlier, like, we don't feel valued, or we don't see our own value, or feel that people know our value. And yet this passage shows that our value comes from God, and that we are valued because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And actually, there are times where we need to ask ourselves, show me, God, for what I'm doing, examine me, God. So he can either show you where you're treating yourself badly, or maybe you're treating other people badly. And like you said, that's a big thing to ask, isn't it?
It is.
Shall we end in a prayer?
Yeah, let's.
Go on, then you can pray for us.
Okay. God, we just thank you for the time that we've been able to come together and talk about you today. And we thank you for the truths that you've set on our hearts. And ultimately, God, we thank you that you know us. We thank you that you're with us. We thank you that you designed us and you have a purpose for us. And we thank you that because of this, we can face the things that threaten us. And God, we just pray that you'd pick out points from these 2 podcasts, and if there's stuff you want us to learn from them, you'd really put that on our heart. And we pray for the rest of the day to just be an awesome day. Amen.
Now, you ended the last podcast by asking what I was going to do, and had the most boring answer of vacuuming. What are you going to do? Is there anything more interesting?
I am going to cook you a curry tonight.
Oh, I actually do like a curry.
Yeah, we're going to have a tikka. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like a tikka.
We're going to have a tikka. I've got some naan bread as well.
Oh, are you homemade? Because you make
It's not homemade, I'm afraid. It's Lidl made. But
it's naan bread. Naan bread's good. Whoever's made it.
It is. There we go. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do.
You guys enjoy whatever you're doing today, and I'm going to enjoy my naan bread and curry later.
And rice.
And rice.
Aren't you lucky? Thank you for tuning in, guys, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye.